This sent a chill through me when I read it, that we may lose the right to a jury trial in all cases. It feels like an important and entrenched legal right that you are tried by, you know, jury of your peers. But, of course, justice delayed, justice denied is the justification from this particular inquiry and proposal, that some cases are taking years to even reach court. And if you cut down on jury trials and just had judges sitting in judgment, you could speed up the process and more people would have their cases heard and more victims would then get the justice that they need. Judge-only trials would be introduced for complex and lengthy cases like fraud and some sexual offence cases. Juries would be reserved to hear the most serious cases. Andrew, what do you think? Who would you rather be tried by if it were ever to come to that?
12 jurors.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. The voice of reason, my piece.
And discussion as well, because they're in the jury room going over it.
All the time.
You know, deliberating.
And you're likely to pull the wool over their eyes.
Do you think that's the case?
Well, look, of course, that's why the conviction rates are lower. Look, I think 12...
you don't trust juries?
12 men and women, good and true, is a cornerstone of justice. But why do defendants opt to go for a jury trial? Because they think they've got a better chance. Because you can appeal in lots of different ways. Now, I'm very windy about these changes. We have some cases now, for instance, employment tribunals don't have juries, although your liberty isn't at risk there. Immigration appeals, your liberty is at risk there. We don't have juries. The magistrates' courts aren't a jury system, but your liberty generally isn't at risk. I would have thought when your liberty is at risk.
Why don't you trust your fellow men and women to consider all the evidence and come to a judgment?
No, I would, but I know why defendants want a jury trial, because they think they're more likely to get off. I mean, that's...
Or they're more likely to be found that they hadn't committed the crime. And,
Susanna, if you look at the rates around the country, they talk two-tier justice as a
So are we letting a lot of guilty people go free because juries are too sympathetic? Is that your
because it's criminal law,
suggestion?
It's beyond all reasonable doubt, isn't it? A civil law balance of probabilities. But no, it's in some cases it's very difficult. I've never served on a jury. I've never been selected.
It's served us pretty well for centuries, and I can't see why if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And look,
but it is broke. I mean,
it is broken.
It's broke.
No, the court system is broken. The backlogs and jails are broken.
But that principle isn't broken. And look, we've had the Lucy Letby trial. She had a year-long case. 12 jurors considered that evidence, and then there was an appeal, and that's been upheld. Now, I still think it was right that a jurors heard that.
Well, and in that case, if it is the case that juries would be reserved to hear the most serious cases, then they would still hear a case like that.
The main change here is that if it's an offence that would have less than 2 years in prison, currently you can have a choice between a magistrate and a jury. And in this service, they're saying that many cases would then go to a judge sitting with 2 magistrates. That would be the change. But let me just ask you on this. Sir Brian Leveson, who's done the report, says this is not something he would want to happen, but he says has to happen because of the total underfunding of our justice system. So if you have a choice between speedier justice, people not being in limbo for years waiting for a case, or losing the right to a jury trial in these shorter than 2-year sentences, which is the least worst evil, you know, of the two? Let's be honest.
It's getting to the crux of the matter. Where the system has just got so stuck.
How have we got to a state where we're asking which is the least worst option?
Well, I think it's always been there.
Our whole justice system
used to be the envy of the world.
It's exactly right.
Yeah, that was a myth. No, come on, it's been stuck for a long time, but the austerity under the last government and cutting justice time after time after time, reducing the fees of barristers, withdrawing legal aid, cutting the core funding, closing courts, sort of fewer courts to have cases. It's caught up with us.
And the backlog currently is 77,000 Crown Court cases with trial dates. Some people are getting a trial date. It is now July 2025. in 2029.
What is it's like in rape cases? It's like 2 years.
And your life is on hold. You can't do anything. Victims and accused in that case.
Yes.
Your life is totally on hold, and it's destructive that way for everybody.
Meanwhile, thieves, thugs and drug dealers could be amongst those avoiding going to Crown Court. Offenders may dodge a criminal record and instead be sentenced to do unpaid work or get rehabilitation. Well, I think everyone's in favour of rehabilitation because you don't want someone to remain a permanent thief, thug or drug dealer. Jury trials scrapped for some drug dealers and sex offenders, with this judge and 2 magistrates presiding instead. This is the way that The Sun is writing up the story. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said, under these new plans, where sentences could be cut by 40% with an early guilty plea at the outset, some killers will serve just a fifth of their sentence. It's a mockery of our justice system.
Are they hiding the fact they're lowering sentences too, or going to lower prison under this?
It happens now, though. If you plead guilty...
Yes, you get a reduction.
It's one compared of the, to if you plead not guilty, then are found, found... I think it's about a third off is around the... the rate, but we are where we are. We've got to make it better. And yes, I think you've got to protect jury trials. For if you're going to be banged up for a long time, unquestionably, but certainly complex fraud cases, they've got to sit there for a year, and you need a degree in algebra just to try and understand it. They're not. I think jury trials aren't suitable. I really just genuinely don't believe they are.
I can understand it in those cases.
Me too.
Complex fraud is complex.
By its very nature.
And when you say, pull the wool over juries' eyes...
That's where you could do it.
I can imagine a number of... if you're not expert in
But a rape or murder, no.
No. Well, and those...
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Yeah. Those cases...
Unfortunately, though, on rape, the conviction rate is, less than 2% on...
Well, that's partly
complaints that are made.
Getting him to court in the first place.
Difficulty getting to court. Sometimes difficulty to.
Which isn't helped by a 4-year wait, is it?
No.
No. If you realise,
Meanwhile, apparently, the Lord Chancellor says she's lifted court funding to record levels. Court funding at record levels, and still you may have to wait 4 years for your case to be heard.
I suspect the record level is in cash terms. And with inflation, it goes up each year. I used to hear this from the last government when I knew services had been cut in real terms. The increases weren't as high as inflation.
I don't remember anyone saying when the Chancellor did that huge spending review that, oh, yes, Shabana Mahmood's got one big for the court service. I didn't hear that. Meanwhile,
of course, President Macron is now here and seems to be having a lovely time, and the pictures of the state banquet are spectacular. However, I thought this was very interesting, his speech, and behind the scenes, he's saying exactly what you said yesterday, Andrew.
Touch.
A soft touch?
I don't think
he used the word soft touch.
I don't think he did say that.
He wasn't tuned in when I said it, but I have said it before.
Well, except he said the UK is to blame for the small boats crisis because we have too many pull factors. It's too easy for people to come here illegally and then to work illegally
in the black economy,
or then claim benefits.
To get benefits. And so he says, we've got to do our part, and we're not. As I said again, he gets his hair off when I say it. We're a soft touch, and that's what he meant. He meant it.
I have long argued the deregulated economy, a largely deregulated economy, and the employment is bad for Britain.
Long argued we're not a soft touch.
It's bad for British workers, and it's why people can come here, because they can just slip into work and work unofficially. A lot easier here than they can in France. Of course, it'll happen.
So are we a soft touch?
Yes.
No, I don't think we're overall.
Well, the President does.
Oh,
you're softening.
No,
you said he's disagreed. Let's hear his answer.
I've got if you look at the benefit system, if you're an asylum seeker, if you're in a hotel or somewhere and you get your meals, the cash you get is less than 10 quid a week to cover everything else. If you don't get your meals, but you get some accommodation, you get 50 quid for your food, your toiletries, your clothes.
Yeah, but it's the black market economy, Kevin, and this is the issue we were talking about this week. It's too easy for people to work illegally.
And another way,
2 weeks ago,
another way of looking at it, as I argued then, is while people are awaiting their claims to be assessed, allow them to work. And then they will pay their rent,
then even more will come here.
And they will pay their tax. And if your case is, I know we just talked about jury trials and how the court system's clogged up, but so is the immigration system. Make sure cases, you have to fund them properly, are dealt with quickly, and if you're entitled to stay, as more than half the people who do come here are entitled to stay, then you stay. And if you're not, then you're dealt with, and it's deported. I don't like the idea of deporting people, but you have to sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have to have a system that works and is quick.
The Home Secretary has prioritised a crackdown on illegal foreign workers and a blitz on delivery drivers.
Yeah, good.
We were discussing, in an attempt to counter criticism of the UK as a soft touch. But it's significant that the French president is saying this.
And
that's the reason they're leaving France.
That lovely moment when he's
coming
making
over.
his speech in the Royal Gallery. So on the one side is the biggest painting you've ever seen of the Battle of Waterloo. And on the other side, the biggest painting of the Battle of Trafalgar. How do you think those two wars...
Meanwhile, we get the Bayeux Tapestry.
Yeah, fabulous.
It's going to be returning to Britain for the first time in 900 years. It depicts 1066, the Norman invasion, and the Battle of Hastings.
And I think it ends with the phrase, then the English did a runner. Something
it
like
is,
that.
it's great.
It's something like that. And then the English ran.
It's well...
Do we really want it back?
Well, to celebrate a great defeat.
Yes, quite.
Look, we're French, we're Norman.
Yeah.
Is it when Harold gets the arrow in his eye?
It does.
Do you think, is this largely symbolic, or is it actually going to be a big boost to our tourist economy?
No.
I've been to Bayeux to see
I've seen it.
People queue to see it. People will queue to see it here. I think it's quite good that countries exchange. I think they're getting the Sutton Hoo ship, aren't they? The old one that was disinterred.
This will now lead to demands for us to lend Greece the Elgin marbles.
But it's not. Well, first of all, they're not the Elgin marbles. They're the Parthenon sculptures, and we nicked them.
Right, we've got breaking news.
Right.
The French side has denied a Telegraph report that Mr. Macron blames the UK for the small boats crisis. A senior Élysée source said the French president looks forward to working with the Prime Minister constructively on this shared priority. Right. There we go. That's been slapped down, hasn't it?
You'll have to retract now.
No, he did say...
Or maybe he was watching you this morning and thought, oh, I don't want Andrew Pearce agreeing with me.
That's not good. Be that bad.
But he did say in the speech about the pull factor. He did use that expression.
But there are pull factors across Western democracies because our economies tend to be more vibrant.
And our pull factor is very soft touch.
We are better countries to live in than if you're in Syria or Eritrea or wherever. And it's a backhanded compliment, and often we've been over there, bombed them, pillaged them in the past during empire, and they want to come over now, and I get it, and they enrich Britain.
And Macron is, of course,
migration enriches Britain.
Macron is caught because he wants to help the British, because he wants to build that relationship there, but at the same time, the rest of the European Union is saying we don't want people back.
They don't.
And they're objecting. So he's trying to play a fine line of sewing between
because the Spanish, the Maltese, Italians, they're very worried if our migrants go back, they end up back there.
France has many times more asylum seekers than we do in the UK. We're not exceptional.
Well, it's twice the size.
If we're in any way exception, no, but in terms of population, it's not. There's a kind of put around that Britain's exceptional and everyone just wants to come to Britain. No, they don't, but some people do, and it's often family ties and language.
Yeah, and the fact we're a soft touch.
No.
Yes.
Not according to
we've got to deregulate the labour market. It's true.